Hi there, and welcome to the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. My name is Todd Rhoades. I'm one of the co-founders over at chemistrystaffing.com, and I'm glad you found us, the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. If you serve on a church staff, this podcast is for you. Right now, we're in the middle of a series we're doing called the 10 Commandments for Church Staff. Today, we're going to look at commandment number 6. So if you've missed the first 5, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it, and go back and listen to the first 5. All of our podcasts here, we're here Monday through Friday, 10 minutes or less. Great for listening while you're maybe on your commute to the office or on your way home. But we'd love to have you join us every day. Today, we're going to look at commandment number 6, and that commandment is talking about how we can cultivate a spirit of service. Now, just a bit on these commandments. They're all based on biblical principles. I like to look at these as an insurance policy. These are some things that I've learned in the last 30 years of ministry that have helped me to stay on track, to set up some guardrails. And I wanted to share these with you in hopes that these will protect you and your family as you minister in your church. They're not a list of legalistic rules. They're not, don't do this or this will happen. But they are areas that if you apply them and if you really try to do them, they will help you stay on track, help you maintain a healthy work-life balance, avoid burnout, and keep you from some of the bad stuff that we see happen to a lot of people in ministry. Okay, today is commandment number 6, and we're looking at how to cultivate a spirit of service. This comes to us, as all of our commandments do, hopefully, with some biblical principles behind them, and this one comes to us from Mark chapter 10, verse 45. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Okay, so let's talk about service. Service is not just about performing tasks. Obviously, in our church roles, whether you're a senior pastor, a worship pastor, a kids pastor, executive pastor, we all have roles and we all have tasks that we need to perform. It's not just about, when we're talking about cultivating a spirit of service, it's not just about performing those tasks. Every job, even those outside the church, have tasks, but it's about performing those tasks while you're being loving and you're caring and you're sacrificing for others. So this is really important when it comes to your work on a church staff, that you are always, right, you're a representative of Jesus, but you're always should be in the mindset of serving others, loving for others, caring for others, sacrificing for others. That's what this whole idea of cultivating a spirit of service is. So how do you do that? Practically speaking, today, how do you do that? The first thing you can do is just by having open eyes, like recognizing and meeting the needs of others. If your head is buried in the tasks that you perform today, you're probably not cultivating a very good spirit of service because you're only trying to check tasks off a list. Cultivating a spirit of service really depends on opening your eyes and seeing the needs of others, recognizing the needs of others, and then doing more with that, practicing humility and empathy. We've talked about both of those, humility and empathy, in our first commandments, and all of these commandments kind of work together for good here. When you're trying to cultivate that spirit of service, eyes open, practice humility and empathy, lead by example, and inspiring others to serve. Really, people are looking at you on the church staff at not only how well you serve Jesus, but how well you serve others. And this is just really important. Let me talk about some red flags. As you say, Todd, how do I know? How do I know if I'm hitting it out of the park here? Or how do I know if man, I really suck at cultivating service? Here are some red flags. If you find yourself, and this is always a hard one for us to self-diagnose. A lot of times we get input from others on this, and it stings, right? If you find that you feel like you're maybe a little bit more self-centered, like you're looking out for your own needs or wants or interests of others, it may suggest that you have a lack of a spirit of service. you might not see this in yourself. All of us have this huge log in our eyes when it comes to some of these things. But if someone comes to you and say, "Man, you didn't even think about me. You didn't ask me about my decision here. You don't seem to care about others." That could be pointing to just that log of self-centeredness in your own life. You need to consider that. Self-centeredness and a spirit of service do not usually walk hand in hand. Okay. Another red flag is if you're neglecting the needs of others, if you're ignoring or you're minimizing the needs of others, particularly those that are in need, particularly those that are vulnerable, it could indicate a lack of spirit of service. A servant leader pays attention to the needs of those in their church, of those on their staff, of those in their family, and they respond with compassion and they respond with action. So if you find that there's others that are in need and you're just neglecting it or you're ignoring it or you're minimizing it or you're just saying, that's just Bob, that could be that you're neglecting this kind of spirit of service that you really need to be leaning into. If you're unwilling to make sacrifice for others, if you find that you're reluctant to make sacrifices that could benefit others, it could suggest a lack of spirit. Serving others often means making sacrifices to your own self personally. That could be giving up some of your time. That could be putting in some effort. That could be providing some resources that you don't necessarily want to do. But if you find that there's a lack of willingness to make sacrifice, that's something you really need to look at. We've already talked previously about a lack of empathy. If there's a consistent lack of empathy or concern for other people's feelings or their circumstances, you wouldn't think, no, that wouldn't have a place in the church. It definitely has a place in the church. It has a place on church staffs when you have supervisors or staff members that are just, I'm just going to do it. That just, quite frankly, is not a spirit of service. And that's something, if you find yourself doing that or you find other people doing that, this is an area that you can work on. If you find that, and we'll use this as our last one, I'm going a little bit over today. If you find that you have an avoidance of what we might call servant tasks, if you find that you constantly or consistently avoid tasks that you think maybe are beneath you or are uninteresting, that may indicate a lack of spirit of service. A true servant is willing to do whatever is necessary to help others, regardless of the task. In other words, step up and do it. I remember early on in my career, somebody told me, "Todd, we all have certain parts of our jobs that we don't like to do." And that could really well fit into this spirit of service. There may be parts of your job that you don't enjoy. There may be parts of your job that you feel like you don't want to do. But from a standpoint of service, that's what God's called us to do. There are all parts of our job that maybe we don't enjoy or like, but yet they're God-honoring and things that we need to do. So that is commandment number 6, cultivating a spirit of service. Think about this today as you go about your work. Think about this week. Are there red flags from some of the things that I've mentioned that maybe just tip you off that maybe I need to spend some real time this week or even today cultivating the spirit of service in my ministry? Okay, we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about commandment number 7. We're working right through this, and boy, this is one that I think we all need. Tomorrow we're going to talk about patience and restraint. You won't want to miss that. We'll talk to you tomorrow.